In our study, we set out to see how manufacturing location affected the safety and the quality of generic drugs. And what we found was that generic drugs produced in India were linked to more severe adverse events than generic drugs produced in the United States. And we looked at a lot of countries, but the United States and India are the two largest producers of generic drugs for consumption in the US. And the results were entirely driven by the comparison between the United States and India. And we also found the result was driven largely by more mature generic drugs that had been on the market for a long time. And that seems inconsistent with the idea that companies might get better at producing over time. But in fact, drugs that have been on the market longer tend to have more competition, lower prices, and kind of the race to the bottom has been run. We did two things that have not been done before. We actually linked drugs to the manufacturing plant, specific drugs to the manufacturing plant, which is very difficult to do. You cannot submit a Freedom of Information Act request to the FDA and get that information. It's considered confidential. So first we did that. And then the second thing that we did that we think is quite good is we matched drugs perfectly based on active pharmaceutical ingredient, dosage form, and route of administration. So we only compared drugs that were made in both the US and in India. So any allegation that our study is driven by a different type of drugs made in the two locations is not true. We only looked at drugs that were made in both locations. The first thing is, we don't want this study to cause consumers to not take drugs that are prescribed for them if either they don't know where it's made or they learn that it's made in India. We still think the drug supply is generally safe. Again, it's just a difference in occurrence of adverse events. So that's the first thing. As far as what should be done by policymakers, we believe that the practice of pre-announcing inspections in India should be changed, and inspections in India should be unannounced like they are in the US. So the FDA currently gives manufacturing plants in India weeks or even months of notice that they're going to come in. And this allows the plants to operate between inspections, maybe at a lower compliance, higher level of quality risk, and then to maybe window dress before the inspectors show up. Another policy recommendation would be to have location labeling on the drugs, made in. Right now it says made for, or distributed by, or something like that. It typically doesn't say made in. Like on our clothing, we have made in labeling, but not on our drugs. And that may shift demand a little bit to domestic producers, maybe. And even better, but also harder, something I'd really like to see happen, but the public doesn't yet have a metric, is to create some sort of quality metric at the drug level based on history of adverse events, history of compliance at the manufacturing facility, et cetera, and make that public as well. And that we believe, even though the market is it's not a typical market, right? You have insurance companies and middlemen and all of that. We believe that would pressure the market to buy from the better manufacturers and kind of halt the race to the bottom.